Hi, in this video tutorial, I'm going to show off how to use a WiiMote as a controller for VJing with VDMX. Before we get started, we're just going to have to open up the back of the WiiMote and go into System Preferences and set up a new Bluetooth device. So if you press this little red button on the back, it'll detect it, and we'll just need to do pairing, and we'll need to switch it into Do Not Pair mode, and then press this button again, and it should be all set up now. So we can quit here and go over to VDMX, where we can do New Project, and under Plugins, go to WiiMote, hit Detect here, oop, there we go, click Detect, and it'll look for it, and there we go, we've got our WiiMote detected. So now I'm just going to go into my import media browser and load in some video files. And if you've used VDMX before, you'll know that we've got a hardware learn mode where you can assign keyboard shortcuts and MIDI notes. And using a WiiMote for its buttons is largely the same thing. So what I can do is right-click on any control, and I can do detect all or detect a specific thing. So I've got the go to the previous clip button, and I'm going to detect that on my minus button. And if I want, I can also just do a quick setup. I can do hardware learn mode, and I can click on this button and toggle that. And for random click, I'll use the home button. So that seems like some pretty good first setup things. So if I'm playing a clip, I can go backwards through my bin with these buttons, and I can jump to a random clip by pressing the home button. So that's how you do just quick button assignments. I'll leave the other buttons right now just up for your own, but what I'll do as a technique thing is I like to make a set of effects, and what I'll do is make 4 different effects. So maybe I'll have a color adjustment that's a hue shift, and I can have a distortion that's a bulge, and I'll hide that, and I'll hide that right now. And now, let's say we can just do a horizontal flip as another effect. And lastly, how about we'll do a dot screen. Great. So if we have these 4 effects, once again, I'll just turn on hardware learn mode, and I'm going to use these as toggles on my D-pad. And that way I can use these to toggle effects on and off. But I also like to have these as momentary buttons. So instead of having them so that I can toggle them like I am right now, I'm going to go into my UI inspector, and instead of toggle from input, I'm going to go to val from input, and now it only stays the dot screen on when I'm holding down on this. And likewise, I'm going to go through and do the same thing on these other buttons so that they function the same way. And now I can perform on these. I can just hold down and get a more instant effect on these. So I can do a bulge, this one does a hue shift, and this one does a flip, but they only function while I'm holding down on them. And this lets it so I can combine effects and flip between them very quickly, but I can also just let up and then advance to the next clip, previous clip, and then jam on the effects for that. So that's one thing you can do, and that's just using the button controls for effects. And the next thing I want to do is, let's say I've got the bulge effect on. The bulge effect has an XY position for where the center of the bulge is, and the WiiMote, we have its accelerometer data. So instead of just having that static, I'm going to go under WiiMote, and under accelerometer I can get my X, Y, and Z. So I'll grab my X, and now if I'm doing bulge, I can adjust where the bulge is by using the WiiMote. And likewise, I'm going to now, just for the next one, I can do WiiMote accelerometer Y. Oh, did I do that for both of them? X and Y? Yep. So now I can adjust both of these using the different accelerometers. So if I swing it in different directions, I get different values off of them based on the orientation. So you can do some stuff with that. And lastly, I'm just going to show off that you can do the IR position. So I've got my basic effects that are running right now that I can adjust, and I've got those with my accelerometer, so I can sort of jam on those in real time. But next, I'm going to just add a another layer on here that I'm going to use as an overlay. So I'm going to pop this open into its own window, the source controls for this overlay. And I'm going to pick from here under Quartz Composer Sources, I'll just grab my radial gradient, and that gives me a little floating dot in my output. And let's make this a little bit smaller. I'll just make the radius go small. There we go. And what I can do now is for the center position, which controls where the dot is, I'm going to right click here and choose WiiMote, and under IR pick X, and for this one I'm going to just obviously pick WiiMote IRY, and I've got my WiiMote sensor set up, so as I point up and down it's following this, and I might want to just adjust this so that the aspect ratio matches my output, so I'll make it 1280 by 720 so that it's 16 by 9. And now I've got this neat little ball that I can control by waving my WiiMote, and I can still jam on my effects. And I've got this other button that's underneath here, so let's just quickly do something with that. I'll just make it so that my radius button, the size of that little circle, is being controlled by, let's do detect all, and we'll use this button on the bottom. So now, as I'm moving my circle and highlighting, I can make it bigger or smaller using that button. If I want it to have the opposite effect, I can use the UI inspector and choose the invert val option there. So now it'll stay big, but when I press down on the button, it makes it small. So opposite behavior of what I had before. And that's some cool stuff that you can do with the WiiMote.